This video will contain the hole in my heart size spoilers for about the first half of Xenoblade Chronicles. If you haven't played until Chapter 10 in DE, then I'd suggest coming back afterwards. If you have or don't care about spoilers, then welcome. Let's begin. When it comes to developing a compelling, memorable narrative, one of the key principles to consider is the matter of immersion. It's a fickle variable, but one that creates a stronger relationship between the recipient and media, allowing for a deeper appreciation of the content. Of course, narratives can value different qualities depending on the goal of your final product. However, I've always felt those successful in leaving the biggest impact are able to suck the recipient into the world, usually sooner than later. Sometimes, this transition from an audience member to an active proponent in the progression of the story can be pinpointed to a single moment. In a book called Stories in Mind, Cognitive Approaches to Library Narrative, authors Catherine Emmett, Anthony Sanford, and Mark Alexander delve into this phenomenon when they mention, literary texts make use of foregrounding devices, with which writers may selectively capture and direct readers' attention. As for foregrounding devices, the base term can be defined as a concept in literary studies concerning making a linguistic utterance, so a word, clause, phrase, etc., stand out from the surrounding linguistic context. So fundamentally, foregrounding devices would be those designed to enchant the reader's sensibilities and grab their attention by standing out amidst the bulk of the narrative. Okay, so writers will cleverly implement moments into their works to captivate their audience. But what does that have to do with our primary subject, the original Xenoblade Chronicles? The way I see it, the use of a foregrounding device to establish immersion is what pushed so many people, including myself, to really get into this game. I have previously discussed what I believe to be the greatest cutscene in Xenoblade Chronicles 2's catalog, but now I wanted to go back to where the Xenoblade Chronicles series all started and select a certain cutscene. That cutscene is titled Loss. Showcasing the best that Xenoblade Chronicles has to offer, Loss sets the stage for the adventure, encompasses the title's themes and concepts, and emotionally connects the player with the struggles and feelings of the protagonist Shulk. But in order to tackle any of that, a bit of context is needed. The very beginning of the game places us among the chaos of a battlefield that would be known as the Battle of Sword Valley. The Mechons seem to be taking the advantage until the battle buddies Dumban, Dixon, and Mumkar arrive and swing the tide. This sequence is a great introduction, as throwing the player into the action immediately can be a good strategy to grab their attention, but of particular mention are three notable features. First is, although the battlefield is littered with Mechon of different designs, none of them really stand out as significant, which even Dumban calls to attention.
For a bunch of soulless machines, they seem to know a thing or two.
The second is the selfish nature of Mumkar, who is shown to hold some jealousy and contempt for Dumban due to his role as the hero and wielder of the Monado, which gets him punished. Finally, while the Monado is slowly killing Dumban, it seems that he is practically an unstoppable beast when the Monado chooses to play nice. So unstoppable that Dumban, Dixon, and the other Homs are able to win the battle and take us to the main setting of Xenoblade Chronicles, which is a year later with the player at the helm with Shulk. The Hom's success at the Battle of Sword Valley has made life peaceful, and we're introduced to several other prominent characters in Reyn and Fiora. Despite the little time we have before the pivotal moment, these characters are developed pretty well, and the audience is presented with their personalities and connections to Shulk. Reyn is the supportive best friend that can sometimes think with his heart more than his head, and Fiora is caring but adventurous and cheeky. I mean, come on, look at that smug grin. All while having a pretty obvious crush on Shulk. The sentiment is shared by Shulk, and the way they play off of each other as well as the scene at Outlook Park are exceptional at selling their relationship. There's one line in particular spoken by Fiora, "I wish every day could be like this," that is noteworthy as it definitely seems to foreshadow at an eventual end to their peace. And on that day, humanity received a grim reminder. The Mechon returned to assault Colony 9, thus presenting us with a problem, but not a firm direction. A bunch of scenarios like Dumban's disappearance and Shulk and Reyn being cornered build the direness, but before the main cutscene of discussion, the event of incredible significance is composed of the events on the bridge outside the colony. As extraordinary as a warrior Dumban is, he can only fight against two continuous oppositions and the Mechon and the Monado for so long until he's brought to the brink of collapse. Surveying his options, Shulk decides to carry out Dumban's mission by picking up the figurative baton that is the Monado, and he actually does extremely well with it. After the initial jolts, Shulk doesn't seem to be attacked by the Monado like Dumban is. Additionally, he's given visions, something Dumban never had, and has been able to counter them flawlessly. For the remainder of the cutscene after that first vision, Shulk remains completely untouched. Although it does not explicitly say it, this can give off the impression that Shulk's visions give way to situations in which he will always succeed. And given his capability to circumvent this singular issue Dunban had with the Monado alongside a new, potent skill, the player might believe that this attack on Colony 9 is salvageable. And that false sense of security right there is exactly what Lost feeds off of. Riding a wave of confidence, the party's confrontation with Metalface lacks a lot of the desperation from their earlier run-ins with the Mechon before the Monado re-emerges, which can be found in Ryan and Shulk's responses. The player might sense a more challenging encounter, but share those feelings of optimism as well. That is, until every hit starts doing 1 damage and they're greeted with the game's first scripted fight. Xenoblade Chronicles has a plethora of these, but the placement of this first one works the best as there's no prior indication that scripted fights would even be a possibility. Lost then cuts off the battle and bombards the player with a bunch of small details that collectively create a gripping introduction. The first of these is when Shulk comments on the Monado's inability to damage Metalface, the party's first red flag. Every Mechon fought with the Monado both in cutscene and gameplay segments thus far has been absolutely eviscerated by it. Even as the player briefly experienced in the game's prologue, the war veteran Dunban who has sliced through miles of Mechon hasn't encountered this predicament. It's the first step in establishing to the audience that despite wielding the Monado without a repercussion, our main characters are not unstoppable like we thought they were. That sense of uncertainty is what is so effective in immersing the player because they want to see how, or even if, this obstacle can be toppled. Wait, both literally and... you get the idea. Yet, in all of this confusion, Shulk is the one to notice the anomaly in this Mechon being the glowing red lights that line his body. We've been told previously that Shulk is the methodical, analytical member of the group, and him being the first to notice the irregularity further proves and strengthens that notion. If you look closely, Shulk actually closes his eyes a bit as if he's focusing in on the red lights and perplexed by their nature. And as the light trickles down his limbs, one of the game's greatest songs, Engage the Enemy, trickles in as well for its grand debut. The song is so poignant because of its blend of instruments and vocal accompaniment that creates the imagery of those struggling in an uphill battle. Like a lot of variables in this cutscene, the utilization of this song sets the stage for the rest of the game, and will inform the player every time they hear it that what they are about to witness will have serious impacts on the characters. For example, the next time it's heard is in Shulk's Power, where Shulk is shown a vision of Juju and Charlotte dying. Since Shulk was unable to save a life the last time it played, one might hear the opening notes and believe their deaths are sealed just like Fiora's. Overall, the song toys with the player and brings them into the moment. Regarding its use in Lost, it matches the opening perfectly, as the eerie, unusual sounds in the song's beginning serve as a reflection of Shulk's bewildered thoughts upon seeing the bizarre lights on Metalface's body.
What is that light? Other Mechon don't have that.
Speaking of Metalface and not trying to geek out too hard, as he's one of my favorite villains, his entire appearance is chock full of subtle shifts in body language that showcase this personality. The reason it's especially interesting here is because the faced Mechon never utters a single word in this cutscene, likely the result of a decision by the developers to not make his identity too obvious since his voice had just been heard a few hours ago. Therefore, his actions need to be solely responsible for selling his arrogant and chaotic disposition, and they enact that in the first few moments when Metalface responds to the party's attempts with a wagging of his finger and a shaking of his head. Furthermore, this character trait demonstrates that his decision-making is much less autonomous than his Mechon counterparts. He's not like the soulless machines Dunban knows. Metalface's first attack prompts Dunban to dive in and save Ryan and Shulk before telling the boys to stay back, while he tackles the threat in front of them. Both actions greatly show his battle awareness and role as a hero that players witnessed in the prologue, and will continue to see. And Ryan, doing his part as the main support of his fellow party members, both gameplay and story-wise, gets this look of surprise at Dunban's proclamation before he attempts to talk some sense into the gung-ho hero. Even in the midst of a bleak situation, these characters are written true to the personalities we've seen in brief glimpses so far and will continue to see as the narrative develops. I really have to commend the writers on working in thoughtful character moments, even if small in comparison to the scene's main objective of instilling a feeling of loss in the player. That notion brings us back to Metalface, who shifts his head back lightly, preceding the blow he delivers to the approaching Ryan and Dunban. It's almost as if his body language is saying, "Seriously? You're really trying that?" Which builds off of the cocky show from earlier, and it's honestly pretty fitting since all of our heroes get slapped silly. I also find it funny that the higher-pitched guitar plays right before Shulk gets tossed aside, almost as if to signify that you should pay attention to our main character in his first true moment of weakness, and that things are about to get serious. Luckily for our heroes, Fiora the badass slides in on her Metal Gear, and I literally mean slides. During this rack focus shot, if you look underneath Metalface before he collapses, only a couple Mechon can be seen. However, she has this sick reveal where she drifts in from behind the face Mechon in the background in such a way that fits quite well with the guitar. The focus then transitions to her as the camera zooms in to illustrate her means of destruction. Dumban comes in to merely utter the name of his sister, but the way it's delivered has this mixed tone of relief with, "I'm so glad you're alright and here to save us," as well as fear in, she has no idea what she's up against. As soon as Metalface turns to lock eyes with his new foe, the terrible events that proceed were virtually guaranteed. Immobilized on the ground, Shulk receives another vision composed of 4 shots. The mobile artillery's Gatling gun being shot off, being tossed against the side of a building, Fiora's body lying in the wreckage, and Metalface swiftly plunging his claws into the remains. The consistent variable among all these visions is that it highlights Fiora's status and each depicts her impending doom. Thematically, this matches with the cutscene's title, Loss, and cohesively brings all of the pieces together into a single entity. The music in this section also syncs incredibly well as the electric guitar fades out as the mobile artillery hits the ground and ceases to move, prior to the remaining piano and beat accompanying the machine's almost lifeless corpse that quickly kicks in with more notes as the vision concludes. Every vision that Shulk has received before this in a cutscene he knew was seconds away from becoming a reality, yet preventable. He has also been the only one on the receiving end of the visions, which made it easier for him to counter as he simply had to react. However, Shulk is now put into an extremely uncomfortable position that differs from previous instances, where he's not the one on the other side of the vision. It's one of the people he cares the most about. So when he stops to consider what he just witnessed as depicted with his dazed delivery and wavering eyes, I can sympathize how that level of sensory overload and shock would paralyze him in a figurative sense, alongside the physical paralysis given by Metalface's attack. The piano also just helps to hammer in the point that the future looks bleak. And it hurts even more to know that Shulk has all of this knowledge necessary to prevent it, but he's in this useless state and his best efforts to warn Fiora fail. Fiora's aggressive charge wonderfully shows her brave nature and Metalface as this insurmountable menace, but it's the way that Engage the Enemy begins to swell just as Fiora rises from the first shot of Shulk's vision to deliver an onslaught of bullets I adore. She's fighting that good fight, but you can tell that Fiora is getting worn down mentally and physically through her heavy breathing at intervals. But that doesn't matter though, because we get the absolute money shot and the music begins to swell down as she delivers the coup de grace. So the evil has been defeated, right?
Wrong!
Engage the Enemy has been a fantastic song up until this point, but this is where I believe it surely makes a name for itself. After a slight pause, the music picks back up and those notable red lights from earlier peer through the smoke to indicate that victory was not achieved just yet. And good God, this imagery of Metalface's eyes slowly coming into frame is so haunting, and the deep heavy sound he makes when walking towards Fiora is actually terrifying. He's not just an arrogant foe, but an actual monster.
Oh, it's a monster!
Major props to Fiora's voice actress Karina Reeves for selling that true sense of fear. I think the last stretch kicks off right when the choir comes in fully as Metalface slowly approaches the mobile artillery's remains and we get this imposing high-angle shot to illustrate Fiora's weakness in the moment. And in the distance, we see the same of Shulk hoping for something, just anything to intervene. The choir builds up as Metalface prepares his claws, and then... That plea and shriek are etched into my mind. It's hard to truly explain the strength of this particular moment, but it's the combination of one trying so desperately to stop something they know is coming, and the failure to do so that kills me. And how do you make it worse? You show how it affects those closest to her, and have the villain toss her away like trash to be picked at by the Mechon. Just look at how Dunban's eyes tremble and how heartbroken he is. I think it's at this moment that the player starts to transition from the state of shock to one of frustration, which is what I believe is the entire point of this cutscene. Give the player a reason to understand and empathize with Shulk's fury, so they are immersed into the world before the story truly kicks off. And that is very evident with Shulk as he slowly climbs to his feet, and there's a short sequence where you can tell that he's still shaky from the attack and his emotions, but is just powered by pure rage at this point. The frantic music during Shulk's uneasy movement transitions into the quieter piano as the close-up shot of Metalface's crimson-soaked claws appear on screen, which allows for the player to take in what they're seeing and possibly representing the death of innocence. One of my favorite details in this scene is the extreme close-up shot where Shulk's eyes, filled with contempt, climb up to meet Metalface. It's actually the same reason that the final shot of the Breath of the Wild story trailer hits me every time, because the hero is rising to the occasion and standing up to continue a seemingly unwinnable battle. What follows is this crushing moment where the anger on Shulk's face evaporates for a brief moment into one of disbelief and sadness. He just witnessed one of his best friends from childhood and the one he loved die right in front of him because for the first time he wasn't able to counter a vision. Additionally, the lightning dissipates right as his expression changes, which practically seems intentional given the facial changes in Definitive Edition. It can be explained that it's simply the effects of Metalface's attack wearing off, but I think it could be deeper given the timing. We sometimes see the lightning from the Monado or a blue aura around Shulk when he's becoming increasingly aggressive, so perhaps the vanishing jolts are representative of his dissolving anger for that moment. Both that shot as well as the next extreme close-up, I think Definitive Edition does so much justice because you couldn't exactly see Shulk's eyes shift or tell what Shulk's mouth was doing before, but it's very evident here that he is gritting his teeth and almost struggling to get the right words out. That sensation when emotions take over and it seems impossible to open your mouth to form words, I know that feeling, and this change feels like a weight in my chest. The addition of those two details might be my favorite change to this entire cutscene, and truly conveys the distraught Shulk is in. Right at that moment that Fiora has died and Shulk's rage boils to the surface, the player is no longer an onlooker. They are placed into the role of Shulk as they understand his pain, his anger, and might even feel it to some degree too. And it can be witnessed in a single line that gives me goosebumps every time I hear it.
I'll kill you!
I've always felt that the death of a beloved character is tragic, but it's the reactions of those around that death that are truly heartbreaking. What are their initial reactions? How does it guide them? Previous interactions with Shulk have displayed a young man that seems to play logic over feeling as seen in the Monado Research Lab, but this moment and line in particular act as the trigger that flings Shulk into the more emotionally driven character that occupies a great portion of the narrative. I say it every time, and I've spoken to numerous others that share this sentiment, but Adam Howden is one of the biggest reasons this scene works so well, because his delivery is composed of raw emotion that never fails to send shivers down my spine. Not to mention that it convinces the player that these emotions are real, which escalates the moment as Shulk vocalizes the player's current thoughts. It was at this moment that this game had truly hit me. This scene is barely over 3 minutes in length, but it manages to do such a wide variety of tasks effectively and even subtly for some. Characters are given development on their previous moments that will persist through the rest of the story's events, like Dunban as the hero archetype, Ryan as the group's support system, and Metalface as the detestable, cocky antagonist. The song Engage the Enemy is carved into the player's mind as a memorable, yet terrifying song as it could bring hype or ruin. Visions are also presented as not purely a gift, as they could curse Shulk with painful knowledge and memories. Plus, the player is shown that the existence of a vision does not guarantee the recipient's success. And finally, what I deemed the most important is that the main focus of the scene, Fiora's death, is the catalyst that initiates everything. Shulk's hatred born from that moment motivates him to leave Colony 9 on a quest for revenge. While factors like that or Metalface's identity might not be apparent upon first watching, they do combine into a cutscene that is rife with strong moments imbued with emotion that immerse the player into the world and our character's struggles. Fiora's death isn't merely an attack on Shulk and Dunban, the target of Metalface's resentment, but an assault on the player's emotions as well. The player is captivated and immersed into the world because they understand Shulk's drive, and that's all thanks to the foregrounding device that is the cutscene loss. I truly believe this is one of, if not the most powerful cutscene in the original Xenoblade Chronicles, and certainly one that I will never forget. Hey there everyone, KJors here, and thank you so much for watching this video. To be honest with you, this one was pretty difficult to do just because I had a couple days of writer's block that were really bad, and sometimes when you're really passionate about something, it's hard to write about it because you feel like you could say it in a lot better way that maybe meets what you have in your head. Overall, I'm very happy with how this video turned out, but if you would like to leave a like on it in support, it'd be very much appreciated. Also, if you haven't done yet, or if you're new to the channel, then consider subscribing. It really does help this channel and community grow, as we actually just hit my year goal of 2,500, so thank you guys so much, and I don't know, I would just like to see how far we can push this by the end of the year. I have a plan of videos that I'm going to have coming out over the rest of the summer, some Xenoblade, some not Xenoblade, some stream highlights, so keep on the lookout for those. I also really hope that you guys are enjoying Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. At the time of recording, I just hit Air of Sea, so I'm not very far along, but I've been taking my time and just breathing it all in. It's a great game. I'm loving it so far. Anyways, that's really all I have to say for now, so as usual guys, thank you so much for watching the video, supporting the channel and everything that I do, and until next time.